Stones of Fire, or Arc of Fire as it's also sometimes called, is the first book in the Caedmon Asquith series by C.M. Palov, or Palov. In short, it is a cross between the Da Vinci Code, Raids of the Lost Ark, and 50 Shades of Grey. In long, it follows Edie, or Eddie Miller, a freelance photographer who, while taking photos of the fabled biblical relic Stones of Fire, witnesses a murder and the theft of the Stones of Fire. She teams up with ex-secret agent turned historian Caedmon Asquith to evade death and find the Ark of the Covenant before it falls into the wrong hands. Well, it was certainly a book. I had a lot of issues, so let's blitz through them really quickly. Also, it's probably going to be a bunch of spoilers, but I don't really care, so... Number 1, the characters are inconsistent and shallow. I'm super worried that the world is going to end tomorrow. Gosh, I'm horny, let's have mind-blowing sex instead, like happens far too often. Any churchgoer would be horrified to learn that Moses was an Egyptian magician and that the Ark of the Covenant was based on a fancy Egyptian bark and the Jewish god is actually a fancy version of an Egyptian god called Artem. Oh cool, the character responds, and then 100 pages later reveals herself to be a Christian. You can't do that. Number 2, the romance was abysmal, its foundation being the characters thinking the other one attractive during most inconvenient times, and then terrible banter. Number 3, the sex stuff was awful. Edie and Caedmon start sleeping together after knowing each other for like 2 days or something, whilst being pursued by murderous insanos, and immediately, instead of being preoccupied by how attractive the other is, they start thinking constantly about how much they want to sleep with the other one again. There was also this random bit where Edie invites Caedmon to sit on the bed next to her to look through a bag of hotel toiletries, and he's like, is she inviting me to sleep with her? And I'm like, no! What? The sex scenes are also so abysmal they made me want to gouge my eyes out with a rusty screwdriver. Number 4, the plot keeps meandering into random sections with no impact. There was this whole chapter about this random uni professor's maid, and how she's an immigrant from Poland and Catholic, and then once had sex with the professor, but that didn't go anywhere, so then she betrayed the good guys to the evil guys, and then we never see her or the professor again. So that was really useful. Number 5, as you know, is a direct quote. Number 6, pointless tragic backstories are pointless. Number 7, this was arguably kind of sexist. It felt very male-gazy, with like random boob descriptions, the sort of stuff you'd see on like men writing women. But the author is actually a woman, so I don't know what happened there. Number 8, leading on from the above, the main characters are unbalanced. Caedmon has the secret service skills, he can fight, he can plan, he has some cool gadgets that he brings up at the end, I don't know why they used them earlier. He's a good leader, he's an expert in the Ark and biblical mysticism, all that stuff. Edie has a degree in women's studies, but she's basically useless and has to be dragged out of danger constantly. And literally, there are so many passages of Caedmon grabbing her arm and just dragging her away, sometimes comparing her to a child, which makes the sex stuff even more awkward. In the opening, before she meets Caedmon, Edie is shown to be intelligent and cunning and able to evade the bad guys on her own, but as soon as she meets Caedmon, she becomes completely useless, and it's really quite insulting. Number 9, the evil guys are cartoonishly evil. They're sexist and Islamophobic and homophobic. But they aren't anti-Semitic, so they're obviously not that bad. Number 10, the bad guys are insano Christians, who are ultra-conservative and therefore evil. You know, actually all the Christian characters are bad guys to some extent, apart from Edie, whose only claim to Christianity is going to church on Sundays and nothing else. Which is also pretty insulting. Where's the positive Christian representation in fiction? Why are we always insane and evil? It's not true. Number 11, there's heaps of questionable, read wrong theology and history, and you know, this whole thing about like Samuel, but I'm not going to go into it. Number 12, the prose was dreadful. Very repetitive sentence structure, including my least favourite thing of the whole doing X character did Y structure, which is always used wrong. The structure is for 2 simultaneous actions, not 2 actions that are in order. The prose is also just very shallow and dull and very much telling rather than showing, and it was just rubbish. Number 13, Following on from that, the book switches between POVs. We have Edie, Caedmon, and then two of the evil guys, but I can't remember their names. The evil guy sections were pretty annoying because of how insultingly stupid they were, with one being obsessed with like praying and God, whilst thinking about his evil plan to kill a bunch of infidels and start some war because of some prophecy in Ezekiel. And the other one like constantly swears, and he also taught me a new slur, so that was fun. But the main characters' POVs were very dull in comparison. There's a very little difference between them, with no personality filtering through, so I don't really know why we kept jumping between them, apart from to reveal Caedmon's tragic backstory. On the plus side, they didn't head hop and introduced a different POV with a new chapter. On the downside, this happened in the middle of conversations several times. You'd have a line of dialogue, end chapter, new chapter, reply to the dialogue, which... I don't know, it was just really stupid and annoying, and I hated it. Number 14, the dialogue was awful. It's very stilted, inhuman, and jumps constantly between sort of swallowed a textbook and the author's attempt at being funny, but actually just using cliched catchphrases and jokes we've heard a million times before, and tries to trick the reader into thinking it's good by having other characters finding it funny or poignant, which is lazy. 15. One chapter begins with the implication that Edie had told Caedmon all that had happened to her at the museum in the opening. In that chapter, she then proceeds to tell Caedmon all that had happened to her in the beginning in the museum. Number 16. This takes place over 6 days. No. Number 17. At the climax, Edie and Caedmon plan to swim out from a fishing boat to this cliff edge at night to sneak into the evil guy's lair to retake the Ark of the Covenant. Caedmon doesn't want Edie to come along, so instead of using like a sedative or sleeping pills on her at the hotel or locking her in the bathroom, he lets her come with him into the boat, swim to shore, get on the shore, take off the wetsuit in hiking gear, and then he punches her unconscious and hopes she'll remain unconscious after swimming at night alone next to Evil Guy's lair until he gets back. A, if you're unconscious for more than a few seconds, you probably have brain damage. B, he's aware he's on a dangerous mission and might not survive, but takes no safety measures to make sure she's alright if he becomes stuck. C, I can't think of a third thing, but it was very stupid. Number 18. This suffers from the old problem of very convenient knowledge. Edie and Caedmon just happen to know just the right piece of information to solve the clue without having to look much up or rethink that much. I can understand Caedmon knowing all this stuff because he's an expert, but Edie is not. So when she occasionally comes out with the answer to something, it isn't believable and feels like the author's attempt to say, look, she's useful too. I swear I'm a feminist. Number 19. There was this one clue that was a poem and they kept going on about how it was a square, and I didn't get what they meant until they included a diagram, and it literally affected nothing, and so I don't know why it was there. The square thing was one of Edie's observations, so again it felt like an attempt to show that she's not completely useless, but then her contribution was completely useless. Number 20. Part of Edie's backstory is being raped by a foster parent. Then there's this whole thing about one of the evil guys wanting to rape her. Why though? It's just a really lazy way of inserting threat and drama. Also, I know that people deal with grief and trauma differently, but her backstory doesn't fit her. I feel like when characters' backstories are revealed, it should help us to understand the character better, but hers just feels taped on and distant and sort of pointless. It doesn't inform us about her. It's just fodder for Caedmon to be all like, oh, she's so brave and amazing, and oh my gosh, and then get all horny about her again. Number 21. Edie is a freelance photographer who does work for a museum. At the beginning, she stuffs her digital camera into her waistcoat pocket. This is a lie, because no camera fits inside a waistcoat pocket. I have many waistcoats. The pockets, if they have them at all, are tiny. And cameras are large, especially if it's a professional camera she has, because what museum would hire a photographer with a rubbish point and shoot? Especially considering this was published in 2009, where point and shoots were not necessarily that great. Number 22. Why were the bad guys so focused on killing Edie and Caedmon? The reason it takes them so long to get going with their mission to find the Ark of the Covenant is because the henchmen want to kill Edie and Caedmon. Why? I don't know. They mention concern that they'll go to the authorities, but they've infiltrated the police and also say explicitly that if Edie tries to phone the police, they'll basically find her from that and get rid of her. Also, there's no reason that the bad guys couldn't look for the Stones of Fire and the Ark, and I guess go after Edie and Caedmon at the same time. Like, they're very bad at managing their time and resources. Number 23, major spoiler, the fancy golden box they find at the end, it wasn't even the real Ark of the Covenant. And the Stones of Fire, for which this edition of the book is named, doesn't really do much. Number 24. Britishness was very wrong. For example, Edie bumps into a lad carrying a box of iced fish at the market. He shouts after her, "Silly cow!" A real British teenager would say something like this.
"You pompous, stuck-up, snot-nosed, giant twerp, scumbag, faced head, hole."
But then again, the author isn't British, so... Though it does beg the question, why make her main character Caedmon British when she's clearly so bad at writing British characters? Number 25, there is far too much swearing. An edgy book is not necessarily a good book. Number 26, the discussion about religion, theology, morality and ethics could and should have been interesting, but instead it was insultingly shallow. Number 27, don't talk about different crystals having different magical properties and then not going into the specifics of the magical properties, because I love that nonsense. Number 28. Gods obviously isn't real, but golden crystals are magical and can kill people, and the Ark of the Covenant was actually an ancient man-made weapon of mass destruction. Of course!